Okay, this is our first pages in our volume 2 of our Math Interactive Notebook. This is page 55A. We're starting on properties, and these properties are for addition and multiplication. In math, there are certain principles or rules that will always be true. These are called properties. Knowing these properties can help you with solving math problems. There are several math properties that we're going to talk about. So we've talked about some of these this year. I'm going to try to give you some ways to remember and keep them separate as far as the different properties. The first one is in both addition and multiplication called the commutative property. Changing the order of the addends does not change the sum. So changing order. Notice both of these have changing order. Okay, in the addition, it's the addends, and for multiplication, it's the factors. So we see that commutative starts with CO, and that is CO for change order. Notice in the example that what changes is the 3 is first and the 7 is second, and 3 plus 7 is 10. When they switch, the 7 is first, the 3 is second, you still have a sum of 10. So that's the same also for multiplication. The associative property is changing the groupings. Okay, so we have group changes, but notice in associative is SO, and that SO means that it's the same order. It's the groups that are changing. So notice we have 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4. Same order, but it's the group. Inside the first group is a 5 and 6. Inside the second group is a 6 and a 4. When we work it a little bit different because parentheses are first. So we have 11 plus 4 and get 15. Here we do the 6 plus 4 first is 10. 5 plus 10 is 15. And we still get the same answer. Same for associative property. Same order, except now we have factors. So it is all multiplication, and we're changing those groups and still get the same answer. Now, the next one is identity property, and we've talked about it, that identity being what you see when you look in a mirror. So if I have a mirror, I have the handle, and I have the top, I can see that identity with adding is adding 0. And when I add that 0, it does not change the value. So the sum when adding 0 is going to be that same number. So for 0, you're adding 0. Identity property for multiplication is you multiply by 1 to get that same number. So multiplying by 1, you get that same amount left, and that's where we have the multiplication part. Now, the 0 property is when multiplying by 0, you get 0. I call it the disappearing property because what's there goes away. So anytime you multiply by 0, you get 0. That's the multiplication property of 0. And the last one, which we have talked about, is our property dealing with distributive property. Distributive property is going to have on the outside a factor. And that factor is multiplied by both parts on the inside. So for example, if I have 3 times and then I have a group of 5 plus 8, I am multiplying that 3 by both parts on the inside. That's how we get the first group of 3 times 5. Notice it's addition, that stays there, and then we have a 3 times 8. So we have distributed that out. Notice here is what we started with, is work differently. Then over here, we would work the groups first. So I would add here for the group and get 13. 3 times 13 is 39. But after I distribute, I would do 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 8 is 24. Add those together, I still get the 39. The next page is using that information we just talked about to match and identify the properties. It's really important when doing this to look at 2 things. Notice on the property list on the right, we have commutative twice because one is for addition and one is for multiplication. We have associative property twice. One is for addition, one is for multiplication. We have the identity property twice. One is for addition, one is for multiplication. We have the 0 property of multiplication, and then we have distributive property. So we're using these properties to identify over here. In doing each of these, you want to see what's different from the left to right. So I notice here that when I multiply by 0, I get 0. That's going to be the 0 property of multiplication. So I'm going to put a G. For the next one, I see parentheses, and I automatically think associative property. But for this, I notice that I have 6 times 4 plus 6 times 11. When we have two different operations that are working together, there's only one property that happens for, and that's going to be distributive. So we have two operations. If I look, this one's kind of backwards, but I can see here that this is multiplying 6 times 4. This is multiplying 6 times 11. And that sign that connects the two parts in the group is what connects the two groups after that it's been distributed. So I'm going to put this one as H. Number 3, I can see that. I am looking and I have 4, 9, 9, 4. Same numbers, but what's happened is we have an order change. We're changing the order. And so when we change the order, that's going to be commutative property. I see it's addition, so it's the commutative property of addition, which is A. If I look at the next one and I compare my numbers, I have 6, 2, 8, 6, 2, 8. Same exact numbers, same order. What's different are my groups. First one is grouping 6 and 2. Second one's grouping 2 and 8. That's going to be the associative property of addition, which is C. And number 5 is I can see I'm adding 0. When I add 0, 27, 27. 27's looking in the mirror and sees 27. That's identity. Identity property of addition, which is E. For the next one, I can see that I have the same thing on both sides, but I'm multiplying by 1. So 36 and 36. Multiply by 1, I get the same thing, identity property of multiplication. So that's going to be F. I'm going to ask you to stop the video. I would need you to complete the list. Notice when you get to the bottom that number 16 has two properties that are involved, and we'll talk about that. But go through, look from one side to the other, and then I'm going to ask you to then restart the video and see if you have the correct answers. Okay, I have put the answers, and you'll notice with the work that I have some arrows drawn. I have some highlighting to help you to see what's happening in each one. The idea is that you're looking at the first expression, comparing it to the second expression. You see that they're equal, but they don't look the same. So what is it that causes that to happen? And it's going to be connected to a property. The last one, I wanted to talk about how the 2 came about. I do notice that I have 2, 8, 6, 2, 6, 8. Automatically, I know it has to be changing the order, but then I look at my groups and I have different things in each group. So it's two properties. It's the commutative property of addition, which was A, and it's also C, the associative property of addition.